Show him that we can win too. Play Jaden when he at full power. Hit him with the mass change. Yeah, I'm the lawyer. Greg is the devour. Heroes, now it's our turn to show you that.
Yugi Peoples, welcome to the discussion video, part 2 of my Houston Regional Report. This video will be on the bad stuff, as considering, playing a going second hero deck. And, honestly, it had nothing to do with the deck itself. Like, I feel like the entire tournament there were only 2 games that were just completely unwinnable. So we can talk about those first. The first one was against Mathmech, which I definitely lost that game. Not only was my lack of knowledge of what my opponent was trying to do, the effects of my opponent's cards, and also just failing to read my opponent's cards and knowing what they do, it just like eventually led to my downfall. But in game 3, I game 3 he went first, and I opened up a hand, all hand traps, basically all hand traps and going second cards, and I lived for 3 turns before he was actually able to kill me. And even after those 3 turns, it would have been, after those first 3 turns, it would have been another 3 turns before I actually drew an engine card, which was Vion, which he's playing Mathmech, so I'm pretty sure, by that point, 6 turns into the game, he's already got a hand trap, so the Vion would have did nothing. So that game was completely unwinnable for me. I just drew absolutely horrendous, and yeah, there was this, that happens. You gotta run going second cards, you gotta run, hand traps, unless your deck is like all just complete gas and you have a way to, break boards, like, completely reliable on your engine. I guess kind of like Sword Soul type stuff. But yeah, so that game. And then my other unwinnable game was, I went first. It was against the Sprite Tri Brigade deck, and I mentioned this in my vlog because it was absolutely insane. But yeah, my opponent, like, I ended on DPE. I want to say I ended on DPE, Dark Law, and Wonder Driver. And then I had 3 back row set, because one of them happened to be I want to say it was polymerization, probably. No, maybe it wasn't. Yeah, it was Miracle Fusion, because I brought back DPE during the standby phase in the Wonder Driver zone. So it was Miracle Fusion, I want to say Book of Eclipse, and Called by the Grave were my 3 back row. On the board, I had Wonder Driver, then of course DPE and Dark Law, because it's pretty effective against that. And yeah, I'd use Wake Up Your Elemental Hero to summon Shadow Mist during my end phase, and mass change that. So my opponent starts off his turn, Harpy's Feather Duster, gets rid of all 3 of my back row, activates Dark Ruler no more, so I can't chain DPE to it or anything, proceeds to battle phase, end of battle phase, evenly matched me. So that's 3 right there, evenly matched me. And of course, I choose to leave DPE on the board. Other times I would have, popped DPE and Wonder Driver, so that my DPE could come back during the standby phase of the next turn. But I can't activate DPE because of Dark Ruler no more. So I leave DPE on the board, and then the 4th card, one of the 4th card he had in hand was Sprite Starter. So he goes full Sprite Tri Brigade combo, uses the what is it? The little the what's his name? The Dragon Lord guy that bounces. So he bounces my DPE back to my extra deck, and ends with Revolt, and just Sprite Tri Brigade stuff. So yeah, that game just like completely turned unwinnable at that point. Like, it was crazy. And I asked myself, I was like, why didn't he just evenly matched all my stuff? But I guess there was a reason why, because he didn't want me chaining cards to be able to do stuff with the against the Dark Ruler no more and everything, because I could have just like flipped up something, because I want to say, no, was one of them mass change? I want to say one of the other. No, it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it was like Book of Eclipse, but he didn't know that. It could have been mass change. I could have flipped up the mass change, changed DPE, popped those, and left Dark Law out on the board and had the DPE ability to come back during the standby phase. So I felt like he did it correctly because he wanted to make sure that DPE wasn't going to be coming back to wreak havoc on his board. So yeah, those two games were completely unwinnable for me, and yeah, that's just what it is. Now the other games, they come from just play mistakes on my behalf. One of the things that I realized as we got into round 5 and 6 is that my mindset, like, I haven't played in a regional in almost a year. I haven't played in like any kind of case tournaments, nothing huge. I just been playing straight locals. And the things about playing against locals is, it's like real relaxed. Everybody at my local is real cool. I'm seeing, y'all have seen on my videos that, there are times where we do things on mistake or accident or forget to do things, forget to say this or forget to say that. And, we allow each other to take it back. It's cool. We like casual competitive. Well, I will say we like casual competitive, but we also cool at the same point to where we don't feel like we want to win by just completely hoeing the other person. Like, there are some things you don't allow your opponents to take back, but like little things, it's like, oh, it's cool, and so when you get used to playing at that, it's just like you don't pay like really close attention to everything that your opponent does and says. Y'all know, like I say it a lot in my videos, when my opponents are playing a deck that I don't know, I basically just go by what they say. If they say that, like, I don't take the time to read the cards, and going into a regional, you can't have that kind of mindset where it's just like, oh, let my opponent take back like little minor things, or let my opponent take back little minor things, or if my opponent forgot to say this or say that, it's cool, go ahead and do it. So even playing yesterday, one of my opponents told me, hey, you too nice, and he said it's too nice when you come to duelists, and he's probably right. Like, um, he's probably right. I do a lot of stuff, like even dueling, my homeboy E last night, he activated terraforming in the imperm column, and I was just like, it's cool, bro, just go ahead. It's like little stuff like that. I think I even did it at nationals where like I could have beat that dude in time, but instead of being that player, I decided to go ahead and pass turn, let him do his stuff, and I gave him a chance, to get victory, in which he did. But I could have, kept comboing, drawing out the rest of that turn. But I feel like at this point, like, I'm going to have to get out of that mindset. I'm gonna have to play a little bit more serious if I am going to be competitive, because I want this to be a competitive channel. I want to be a competitive player. So I'm going to have to go into the next regional without that, just lax mindset of where I'm not forced to read my opponent's cards, where I'm just gonna go by whatever they tell me, So that's number one tip for y'all, for everybody who plays at the locals and might be playing in your first regional, or whatever you're going to go play in, is number one, read your opponent's cards. Don't go by what they just tell you, because they're not probably going to tell you like the whole effect. They'll tell you part of it, or the part that's completely relevant at that moment, and just omit the other stuff, and then later on you find out, oh, it also does this. So yeah, that's kind of what happened to me against my Math Mech deck. I didn't realize that any monster that I guess Diameter makes XYZ or Synchro Summon or whatever, it gets the Omni Negate effect. So, going into one of the games, he uses it to make the XYZ that has the ability to search out, a spell or trap or something that says Math Mech in it, and I ash it. And he activates the ability with the Diameter thing to negate it, and then I have to also chain Imperm in order to negate it. So I had to waste 2 hand traps in order to stop that card from searching, in which he continued on with his turn and kept doing stuff anyway. But if I had known, I probably would have just had to let that go, and I would have had to ash or Imperm something else, later on, in order to try to stop him. But it's like little things like that, like read your opponent's cards. Number one, read your opponent's cards. I know Yu-Gi-Oh players don't like to read, it's a big meme thing, but when you play at a competitive level like that, don't take your opponent for what they say. Read their card and actually knows what it does. Make sure it's a legal activation and all that stuff. All right, so that's part of the reason why I lost the Math Mech game. Now, my second loss was to the Sprite Tri Brigade deck. He went first, and his end board was like IP Masquerena, that monster that's like a link to, that if the monster it points to activated its effect this turn, he can negate the effect and reduce its attack to 0. So he had that, and then he had like Sprite Red and Karis on the board. So that was his end board, and I'm pretty sure he had Revolt set. No, yeah, no, he had Revolt set. So he had Revolt set. So going in my turn, I know that Masquerade Dragon, IP, I keep saying Masquerade, IP Masquerader can only activate during the main phase. So I'm thinking if I have the Book of Eclipse in my hand. So I'm thinking if I go ahead and stop the IP Masquerada from activating her effect, it keeps him from having that, and also the monster that has the effect to negate and decrease my attack to 0. So in the standby phase, I go ahead and activate Book of Eclipse to go ahead and flip down the Karis and the Sprite Red. Now was it Red Sprite? Whichever one negates monster effects. That's the Sprite that he had on the board. So I'm like, I flip those down, and then he only has the IP, effect and the Tri-Brigade Revolt. And looking at my hand, I'm like, okay, I can kind of play through that, without him having that on top of it, monster negate on top of it. So he activates Ash Blossom and Joy Spring because Book of Eclipse has the effect to draw, so you can Ash Blossom it, and my opponent Ash Blossomed it. So me, I'm so used to when I activate cards and everything and stuff, like even if this was just like completely bad play area. I thought about it. I didn't say thinking inside of my mind, which is another subject to get on to. But I didn't say thinking inside of my mind. I go ahead and I don't say anything. I go ahead and move the Book of Eclipse to my graveyard. And then, I decide, what? I need to go ahead and chain Call by the Grave. So I say chain Call by the Grave. But since I've already moved my Book of Eclipse to the graveyard, my opponent says, hey, you already let the chain resolve. So, fair. I should have said thinking. I shouldn't have moved my Book of Eclipse to the graveyard, and I should have, chained my Call by the Grave at that point. So I ended up losing that game. I definitely, because I had Fusion Destiny and stuff in my hand, I had enough to be able to play through, 2 interruptions, but that third interruption was just going to be, well, actually, it was like, would be a total of 4 interruptions because he's got the Sprite Red, the IP, the monster, I don't know the name of that monster, and then the trap card. So instead of having to play through 2 interruptions, I end up having to play through 4, and it's just too much. So I lose that game. So in a regional level, a regional mindset, you can't do stuff like that. Your opponent's not going to be cool about it. Don't move your cards to the graveyard until the chain has fully resolved. If you need a moment to think about it, do not use the word okay. Say thinking, and think it out. Because there was another situation where one of the guys from my local, he got into, like, I wouldn't say they like necessarily got into it, but they were going into time. The guy from my locals had activated, I want to say it was branded in red to go ahead and do something, and the dude said okay. And then as he was getting ready to do it, the dude goes to activate this thing. He says, I have a response. All right, so they get into an altercation. He said, no, you said it was okay, so I'm resolving the effect of branded in red. And the dude was like, no, I was saying it was okay for you to activate Brandon in red, but I have a response to it. And, it's just one of those things where, saying the word okay is just like, it could be looked at, it's like, okay, go ahead and resolve your card, go ahead and play it. But, he was saying it's an okay, as in, I don't have like solemn judgment or something in order to, negate the activation of Brandon in red. So, they called the judge over. And they went back and forth for it looked like 10, 15, 20 minutes and stuff about words and how you used them and what was going on and stuff. But eventually, because the dude said okay, they said he could not respond to it. So the Brandon and Red thing went through, and he couldn't do anything about it. Like, I think they still ended up in a draw because the dude stalled out like the rest of the 2-minute time extension and stuff or whatever that they had. So yeah, so words that you play, moving your cards to the graveyard before you have decided if the chain link is resolved and stuff, like, definitely no-nos. Do not do those things. All right, and yeah, so those are those 2 losses. A couple of tips are going to the regional. Read your opponent's cards, know exactly what they do, ask questions if you need to. Make sure that they don't have graveyard effects, and just like different stuff like that. Make sure they're legally activating the cards when they do. Be careful with the words that you use. Don't use okay if you have a response to the opponent's card. Say like thinking, see if you want to respond to it or something like that. All right. So yeah, things to keep in mind. Also, don't let your opponent take back moves at a regional. Just don't. And if you have the opportunity to do things, and this is probably not. Never mind. I'm not even gonna say that because, like, during that thing, the time extension, the dude took his time, reading each and every single card that his opponent had on board, asking to see his graveyard, reading cards inside of his graveyard, thinking as he set each card, and eventually, like running out the rest of that time. And one thing to think about, is I know there's like slow play rulings and different things and stuff, but if you're reading cards and trying to figure out what they do and asking questions and everything, those are ways to to play around, the time system. And, honestly, I'm going to tell you, like, your opponents are going to do that. If they can take a draw instead of a loss, they're going to do that. So be careful with people, slow playing. Be careful with slow playing yourself because, they can, call judges and stuff like that. And, that was, why my opponent, why one of my opponent, slash homeboys, at the tournament last night told me I was too nice of a player because I let my opponent basically do nothing for about 3 minutes and force out a draw. And I'm just like the type of person where I don't really say anything, but in the future I realize that, like, if I do want this to be a competitive channel, then I need to start playing more competitively, and not necessarily like my deck wise. Like, I feel like my deck choices, are pretty okay. I can figure out a way to win with them. But, as far as like rules go and, doing stuff, allowing people to take time to think and do all that stuff, I have to stop doing all that. And I have to quit doing it myself if there are times in games when I am doing it, So, yeah. Then my third loss was against Cash Tears. And I want to say, what was like the main reason? Like, I know there was like some big play mistake. Okay, yeah. So my opponent went first, and he did the Rise Heart Pass thing. All right. So what I decided I had imperm, so I just straight up impermed his Arise Heart, and proceeded into making my turns. He had the trap card, which allowed him to do a couple of like crazy things, but long story kind of short there, he ends up with what's his name, the one that people like, the one that has the banish on card effect activation or attack, Fenrir. So he ends up with a Rise Heart and Fenrir back on the board because of his traps and spells and stuff. Like, they do something, allow him to special summon back and do stuff like that. So eventually those end up back on the board, so I have to Book of Eclipse them, and I continue on with my turn. I have the ability to OTK him. I bring out Wake Up Your Elemental Hero. I want to say he's got like 3,700 attack. Then I got my Sunrise on the board, and long story short, it was like 37 or something like that with like 2 attacks. Then my 3K Dread Decimator, 3K Sunrise. All right, he's got the field spell out on the board. I go into attack. He's got that one that attacks in defense position, and I think it like negates monster effects or something like that. So I didn't read the card, so I wasn't sure exactly like how its effect work and stuff. But instead of taking a chance and like doing that stuff, I'll go ahead, declare an attack with Dread Decimator since he has piercing into the face down of Rise Heart. I activate Sunrise effect to pop that ogre monster or whatever that thing is. I won't say it like negates monster effects that it battles or something like that. So I pop that with Sunrise, 3K attack into the Rise Heart. A Rise Heart with the field spell on the board has, for some reason, it has 3,200 defense. Once again, I lose a game. It was open public knowledge for me to know how much defense the card had. I could have asked him, hey, how much defense does a Rise Heart have? And, I could have planned accordingly, but, just playing, thinking, being so relaxed and everything and stuff, on top of that, I banished like three or four warriors, you know, to just boost up, you know, wake up your elemental hero and have his attack out there. And so, you know, those were additional monsters that could have had the increased attack, you know, due to Dread Decimator, you know, 100 each or whatever. So, you know, even if I had just left one of them, no, I would have had to leave like at least 3 of them off in there to be able to get over the Rise Heart. So, you know, once again, I lose a game for failure to, you know, look at my opponent's cards, carefully evaluate the board state, and, you know, just blew that game. And that was game 1. Like, he went first, a Rise Hard pass. I definitely could have won that game. And, you know, it's just like, yeah, no, it was just like at that point, you know, I just got my 3rd loss. I'm not playing at a regional winning level. I'm just not, you know, it was like 2 rounds left, and it was just not gonna happen to me. And, you know, even earlier in that regional, I think it was my round 2 match against Trap Tricks, I went to go activate Fusion Destiny, and my opponent had this big old smile on his face, and he says, okay. And then, you know, I pick up my deck like I'm going to resolve. He's like, no, you activated it in the imperm column. I was like, oh my God. So, yeah, I did that. You know, that was like play mistake number 1. So, you know, advice for people who play, you know, at a local level, you know, maybe your locals that you go to is not, you know, as competitive, you know, casually competitive and stuff, where, you know, people, you know, everybody knows each other, everybody's friends, everybody's cool, you know, people play what they want to play, and, you know, just have fun, not having to also always play at like a super competitive level. You know, don't go into the regional with the same mindset that you go into that locals with, because you're not going to be able to win. Like, you know, there's just like so many things, you know, reading your opponent's cards, being aware, asking your opponent, you know, known cards in hand, known cards on the board, knowing the attack and defense of them, knowing where the imperm column is. You know, you can't mark stuff like that. You know, I think even now they can't mark the bot Kashtira zones, you know, without certain things and stuff. So, you know, all these things you have to keep in mind, and yeah, you're just gonna have to, your mind's gonna have to work a little bit harder at a regional, you know, YCS, you know, if you want to be able to win those matches. So, you know, all that being said, you know, that was the bad that happened going into that tournament. You know, there was also another game where I ended up winning the match against Kashtira, but he had put the Infinitrack monster up under his Arise Heart, and it makes machines to a point to where they can't be destroyed by card effect. And I tried to pop it with DPE, and, you know, of course DPE died, you know, at that point without killing the Rise Heart, you know. So there's just like so many play mistakes I made at this regional. I was not, you know, I just was not mentally playing at the level I needed to. So, you know, a couple tips for y'all who will be playing at regionals, you know, local, like not local, but, you know, even your locals too, you know. So, you know, from here on, I'm actually going to start, you know, being a little bit less relaxed with, you know, gameplay and paying attention to everything. I'm going to read my opponent's cards. I'm going to, you know, leading up to the Fort Worth Regional, I need to get used to doing stuff like that, so that when it comes to regional, you know, it's already second nature. It's something that I'm already doing, and, you know, it just becomes like that. So it is what it is. And so that'll be this discussion video. Like I said, like overall, going second hero deck, like, as long as you draw like 1 or 2 going second cards out of the 6 cards that you draw, and, you know, like 1 or 2 engine cards, you know, you're usually like pretty golden. It was like I said, there was only 2 matches the entire day where I felt like, or not even say 2 matches, 2 games throughout the entire day that were just completely unwinnable for me. It was the Math Mech one where I just drew all no engine cards for like 6 turns, and then the Sprite Tri-Brigade deck where that boy like 4-pieced me, and, you know, yeah, that boy had the 4-piece mix combo right there. But yeah, that was pretty bad. So, but overall, the deck performed really well. Even though I didn't evenly match anybody, you know, all my games that were won, you know, it's just like I drew like the perfect mix of going second cards and the perfect mix of like engine in order to be able to win the game. So I wasn't disappointed in how the deck performed at all. You know, it is what it is. So tomorrow we will do a discussion video about my I think this might be the final week on Omni Hero, so we'll talk about, you know, my locals, you know, and how I did with the Omni Hero, and we will announce the giveaway winners also. So yeah, appreciate everybody for staying a while to listen, and I will catch y'all on the next video.
Messing with the masked hero, king of games. Mask off, now you see that a hero lives. I pay half and you ask, but I'm winning games. There ain't another hero that surpasses me.